How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Pei Hey, Daf 85 of Masechta BavaBasra. Friends, friends. Chaver, listen. We have a lot of work to do on Daf Pei Daled Amud Beis. We're getting into like a new topic, a gewaldige topic, very much related to like different kinds of kinyonim. We're going to start getting to Kelyo Shel Lokeach B'Shus Mocher, interesting sugyas and other things as well. So, without further ado, let's do it. Pei Daled Amud Beis at the Mishnah, says the Mishnah about 10-15 lines into the page. Hamocher Peiris La Chaveiro. Okay, so if Shimon sells fruits to Reuven, and they already, as Rashi says, as Rashbam says, they already ufasak lodam. They already agreed on a price. Okay, it's going to be X amount of money per kilo or whatever. So Hamocher Peiris La Chaveiro. So Shimon is selling fruits to Reuven Moshach. So if Reuven does a kinyan Meshicha, velo madad, even though they didn't actually weigh out how much it is, right? They agreed it's going to be, I don't know, $10 a kilo, whatever it is, and Reuven does a kinyan Meshicha, so that's a proper kinyan, even though they didn't actually weigh out how many kilos it is. Madad velo Moshach. However, if it was fakert, if Shimon weighed out the fruits, but Reuven never did a kinyan Meshicha, well then lo kana. Well then there's no kinyan. Im hoya pikeach, if Reuven was a smart guy, and the Gemara is going to have to explain what's the context for this, but if Reuven was a smart guy, soches mekomon, he would hire the place of the fruits. Okay, we're going to have to explain what's the context for that. Halakech pishton mechavero. If Reuven buys flax from Shimon Areza lokana ache yitaltalenu mimakum lemakum, so the kinyan would be a kinyan hagbah. The Gemara is also going to explain that, I think either tomorrow or the next day. So Reuven would have to do a kinyan hagbah on the flax. And if I guess the flax was connected to the ground and he made a kinyan on part of it, so he makes a kinyan on all of it. Again, the Gemara is going to have to explain this. This Mishnah was like very, I don't know if I would necessarily say esoteric, might be a little bit more esoteric than it was, but I don't think there was anything in this Mishnah that was straightforward. Not ridiculously complicated, but everything needs like context. Omer Abasi says the Gemara, Omer Rabbi Yochanan, the Abasi says the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Madad v'niach al gabe simta kana. So says Abasi and Rabbi Yochanan that if Shimon weighs out the fruits and then just places them on the floor of a simta, of like a simta is either, the Rashbam gives two potential definitions for a simta. It's like 4 or 5 lines before Rashbam gets wide. The simta is down, it doesn't say shvil sheyachidim, kind of like a small little path for people. But I heard knisa boletis mirshus harabim, some kind of place that kind of juts out from Rishus Harabim. V'yes Rishus Livnei Adam Lahamid Sham Chafatzim Shalem, and people have permission to kind of put their things there. Chatzar Shutvim, it's like a chatzar that's jointly owned. The Eino Asui Lehiluch Pnei Rishus Harabim, it's not, the people of Rishus Harabim don't necessarily walk there. It's some kind of like offshoot or something. Anyways, so if they're in the Simta, and Shimon weighs the fruits and then puts them down on the floor of the Simta, so Kona, says Rabbi Asim Rabbi Yochanan, that Reuven is Kona, is Kona those fruits. Amar Reb Zera l'Rabasi, says Reb Zera to Reb Asi, Shema lo shama Rebbe, maybe you didn't hear Rabbi Yochanan properly. Ela b'modeh l'soch kupaso, Reuven would only own these fruits if Shimon weighed the fruits and then put them in Reuven's vessel. Only once they're in Reuven's vessel would they belong to Reuven. Not just if Shimon puts them on the floor of the Simta, Omar Le, to which Rabbi Asi retorts, Domi hai me rabbanon kidlo gamri inche shmaita this rabbi, Reb Zera, it's as if he never learned anything. Modad l'soch kupasu meimer boy, do I really need Reb Yochanan to teach me that if Shimon weighs the fruits and then puts them in, if Shimon weighs the fruits or measures the fruits and then puts them in Reuven's vessel, do I really need Reb Yochanan to tell me that in that case it would belong to Reuven? For sure it belongs to Reuven. What I need Reb Yochanan to tell me is that even if Shimon puts it, that even if Shimon puts it on the floor of the Simta, it also belongs to Reuven. Kibla minei or lo kibla minei. So the shaila is, after Reb Asi responded and said that Reb Yochanan must be talking about when Shimon puts it on the floor of the Simta and Reuven is Kona, what was Reb Zera makabel or not? Right? Did he accept that this is the halacha that putting the fruits on the floor of the Simta would be a kinyan for Reuven? Tashma kamnei damar Reb Yanai, Reb Yochanan's Rebbe, Amar Rebbe, the name of Rebbe. Chotzer as shutfin, that the chotzer that is jointly owned, konin zemizet, so you can make a kinyan, my lav agabe karka. And we want to say that that's talking about on the karka, i.e., if you have this area that is jointly owned, or maybe, right, it could be a simta, and Shimon is selling fruit to Reuven, so it's a valid sale. So we say ma'alav agabe karka, and let's assume that it's talking about where Shimon is putting the fruits on the floor, and we're saying that it's a proper sale. No, l'soch kupaso, it's talking about where Shimon is putting it. We can argue it's talking about where Shimon is putting it into Reuven's vessel, and that is why Reuven owns it. So it's not necessarily proof to say that he could put it on the floor. It makes sense to say that the kinyan is only when the fruits are put in Reuven's vessel. Because after all, Reb Yaakov says in the name of Reb Yochanan that if Shimon measured the fruits and then put them on the floor of the simta, lo kona. Reuven is not kona. Kashina adodi. So now these two memers of Reb Yochanan are contradictory. On the one hand, we started off today by saying Amar Basim Reb Yochanan. I'm going back to the beginning of the Gemara. Modad v'niach hagabe simta kona. And now we just said Reb Yaakov and Reb Yochanan modad v'niach hagabe simta lo kona. So Kashina adodi. What do we do with this contradiction? Elalav shmamina kan b'moded desoch kupasu kan b'moded agabe karka. Shmamina. Rather, the difference must be that, well, if Shimon is measuring and then putting the fruits on the floor of the simta, Reuven is not kone. But if he's measuring it and putting it in Reuven's vessel, then Reuven is kone. So Shmamina, so there you go. It must be that Taka Reb Zera was right that that Shimon was putting the fruits in Reuven's vessel. Tashma coming here. Modad v'lo moshach lo kone. Our Mishnah had said that if Shimon measured the fruits and Reuven did not do a kinyan meshicha, well then lo kona. Reuven is not kona. My love, besimta. And it must be talking about in a simta, i.e., we want to say that it's talking about where Shimon put it on the floor of the simta and Reuven is not kona. So lo b'shus harabim, no, you could say that that's talking about b'shus harabim. You could say that when Shimon measures the fruits and puts them on the floor, we're saying that it's not kone, so then that's talking about Rishus Harabim. Yochi ema reisha moshach v'lo modad kono. But one second, but the reisha says that if you did a kinyan meshicha, so then that would then Reuven would be kone. But meshicha b'Rishus Harabim mikane, meshicha doesn't work in Rishus Harabim. V'o Abai v'Rava damit Avayu. We learned the other day that Abai and Rava both say mesira kone b'Rishus Harabim, that a kinyan mesira is kone Rishus Harabim, uvechotzer sheina shashneim, or in a chotzer that belongs to neither of them. But meshicha kone besimta v'chotzer shein shashneim. But meshicha only works in either a simta or a chotzer that belongs to both of them. V'agba kone b'chol makom, and hagba, picking something up, could be kone anywhere. So we had said that. Wow, what did we just said? I don't know. Well, I'm going to back up like 10 lines. Tashma modad v'lo moshach lo kona. Right. So we said that basically, if he measures it and puts it on the floor so then there's no kinyan. So first we want to say my lav besimta. So first one said that it's in a simta and there's no kinyan. So unlike Rav Asi, said lo b'shus harabim. No, you can say it's talking about b'shus harabim. That's why it's not kona. But in simta, you can argue that it would be kona. If that's the case, ema reisha. What about the reisha? Mashach lo madad kona. Mashiach b'shus harabim mikanya. But how can you make a kinyan mashicha in rishus harabim? Right. So meaning. So if we're talking about where he places the fruits on the floor of Rishus Harabim, and that's why Reuven is not Koneh, well then that means that the Mishnah, when the Mishnah says that Mashach velo Moda, that if you did a kinyan Mashicha it would work, how could that be talking about Rishus Harabim? After all, Abai and Rava say that kinyan Mashicha does not work in Rishus Harabim. So how could the Mishnah be talking about Rishus Harabim? Okay, let's go back to where we got to. So 3 lines before it gets wide. So my Mashach, 4 lines. My Mashach Nami de Katoni. Well, look, it is talking about Rishus Harabim. So then, how could a kinyan Mashicha work in Rishus Harabim? Because when it says Mashach, it says Rishus Harabim lesimta. It's not talking about doing a kinyan Mashicha in Rishus Harabim. That's correct. That would not work. But you could do a kinyan Mashicha by pulling the fruits from Rishus Harabim into a simta, and in the simta, the kinyan Mashicha would work. Okay, so we could say it's talking about Rishus Harabim. If that's the case, Ema Seifa. But then what does it say? That if Reuven was smart, he would rent the area where the fruits are, the place where the fruits are. But if we're talking about Rishus Harabim, Miman Oger, who is he going to rent from? So how could it be talking about Rishus Harabim? This is what it's saying. V'im b'shus bailim he, and if it was in Shimon's house, well then, if Reuven was smart, he would rent the place where the fruits are, and then by renting that place, so and he would be kona the fruits that way. Sheesh. Okay, fine. So it sounds like we didn't necessarily resolve that. Right? Meaning we said if Shimon puts the fruits on the floor of the Rishus Harabim. So, Rabbi Asi had said that Rabbi Yochanan would be kona. Rabbi Zera said it's not kona. We had asked kashas, some pretty good kashas on Rabbi Asi, but ultimately where we ended up just now, we wanted to say that it would not work in a simta, but then we said no, that's something which is around where it doesn't work. Okay, fine. Rav Shmuel Damar Tarvayu. Well, okay, we're finally getting up to today's daf. Whatever, we had a lot to do on Pedalim and Beis because I'm happy that we started with this today. Started with the new Indian. Okay. Anyways, fine. That was kind of the sugya of is Reuven kona when Shimon puts it on the floor of the simta. Okay, it was machlokes of Asi and Zera. Now we get to the concept of kelyo shalokech, the vessel of a lokech, and how that works in terms of kinyonim. So Rav Shmuel Damar Tarvayu, Rav Shmuel say, kelyo shel adam, a person's vessel, konelo, acquires for him, b'chol makom, anywhere, chutz me Rishus Harabim, as long as it's not Rishus Harabim. Rishus Harabim, if let's say in Rishus Harabim, Shimon puts fruits in Reuven's vessel, so then that would not work. But anywhere else, a person's vessel is kona. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Damar Tarvayu, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Lakish say, afilu Rishus Harabim, even taka in Rishus Harabim, Reuven's vessel can be kona for him. Amar Papa says to Papa Lo Plige that actually Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish are not arguing. Kam Rishus Harabim, kam besimta, that in Mamish Rishus Harabim everybody would agree Reuven's vessel cannot be kona for him. But in a simta, Reuven's vessel can be kona for him. V'amai karu la Rishus Harabim. Why are they calling why are they calling a simta Rishus Harabim if it's a simta? She'ein Rishus HaYachid, because it's not Rishus HaYachid, so they call it Rishus Harabim, because it's kind of more of an open area, I guess. But it's not Rishus Harabim. Hachnami Mistavra, Damar Babao, Rabbi Yochanan, and this taka makes sense, because says Rabbi Babao, Rabbi Yochanan, Kelyo shel Adam kona lo b'chol makom. The Rabbi Babao says, name Rabbi Yochanan, the person's vessel can be kona for him in any place, sheyesh lo rishus la'anicho, wherever he has permission to put it down there. Yesh lo rishus in lo rishus lo shmamina. Meaning, if he has permission to put it there, I guess if it's considered like a rishus that he's shaykh to, as opposed to not a public domain, and therefore a person's vessel will not be kona in the public domain. Okay, fine. Ta shma. Okay, So we had just seen opinions that a person's vessel is not kone in Rishus Arabim. Now, Toshma, come and here. Arba midas b'mochrin. There are 4 measures, almost like 4 scenarios when it comes to sellers. Interesting, because that's the same lashon that we had in the Mishnah, in yesterday's Mishnah. Right? Arba midas b'mochrin. Okay. Now here are the following 4 attributes. What did I just say a second ago? Arba midas. I don't remember what I just said. I like the word that I just said before. There are 4 not measures, but categories, I think I said. Yeah, I think categories is decent. There are 4 categories when it comes to selling. Ad shelo nismala mida lemocher, mish nismala mida lelokeach. So, wait, is it ad shenismala mida or ad shenismala mida? Let's see, let's look it up. Alright, page turn. Okay, let's see. Come on. Okay, so it's probably ad shenismala mida, it sounds like. I was hoping it would, yeah, okay. Anyways, alright, let's read it like that. Let's see how it goes for us. Tashma ad midas b'mochen ad shelo nismala mida. I don't know. Ad shelo nismala mida lemocher. Maybe let's say that. Whatever. Who knows? So again, where am I? So ad shelo nismala. Okay, so if you have a vessel, okay, and it's not yet filled up. So long as the vessel is not yet filled up with, let's say, fruits, so then it still belongs to the seller. It still belongs to Shimon. Mida lemocher, so the measure, I guess, belongs to the, I don't know, it belongs to the seller. Once it gets filled up, once the measure is filled up, at that point it belongs to the buyer. When do we say this? That like while it's filling up, it still belongs to the seller, but once it's filled up, it belongs to the buyer? When the measuring vessel belongs to neither the seller nor the borrower, or the seller nor the buyer. So they borrowed a measuring vessel from somebody else, from a third party, in order to use it to measure let's say the fruits that Shimon is going to sell to Reuven. So basically the understanding is that so long as it's being filled up, it still belongs to Shimon, the seller. But once it's filled up, now it's at that point it's shaykh to Reuven. So that's scenario number 1, right? That when the measuring vessel belongs to neither of them. But if the measuring vessel belonged to one of them, well then Rishon Kana, well then it is it belongs to whoever owns the vessel, right? So if it's Reuven's vessel, then if it's Reuven's vessel, then as Shimon's filling it up, it already belongs to Reuven. If it's Shimon's vessel, then even once it's filled up, it still belongs to Shimon. Okay, so that is scenario number 2. When do we say this? Rishus Harabim. And that is in Rishus Harabim. So that's very interesting, by the way, right? This is going to be the question. Right? Because we had said earlier that Kel Yoshe Lokeach Rishus Harabim is not Koneh, and yet we just said that if the vessel belongs to Reuven, well then as it's getting filled up, it belongs to Reuven, and we said that this is Rishus Harabim. Okay. Or a chatzu that does not belong to either one of them. Okay. Ava b'shus mocher, but in the rishus of the seller, okay, lo kana achak biena or achiyotzenim rishus. So if we're talking about the rishus of Shimon and Shimon's rishus, well then Reuven is only koneh once he does a kinyan agbah, or if he takes it out of Shimon's rishus. Okay, we're gonna have to understand this. Rishus lokeach. So that's part of like category number 3. The rest of category number 3 is actually going to be the case after this one. Now, b'shus lokeach, if we're talking about in Reuven's house, so like Shimon goes to Reuven's house with like some stuff for Reuven to buy. So kevin shekibel olav mocher kan lokeach. Once Shimon says, yeah, okay, let's go ahead with the sale, and he agrees to sell it. So memele, since it's already in Reuven's house, so then it belongs to Reuven. B'shus hala mufkodim etzlo. And what if Shimon had like deposited fruits with Levi, and now Reuven comes to buy them? So lokona acha yikabel olav. So Reuven is only going to be kona the fruits once Levi agrees that that where the fruits are being stored on his property. Right. Once Levi agrees that where the fruits are being stored on his property, Reuven can keep them there. Or if Reuven rents that space from Levi, so so then they belong to Reuven. Okay, so that's kind of category number 4, together with the Rishus HaMocher. So the Rishus HaNifkad as well as Rishus HaMocher are basically category number 3, I guess, because category number 4 was the Lokeach's house. Anyways, Katani Mia, we taught in this Brisa, which had these 4 categories, B'Rishus HaRabim, U'v'chotzer Sheni Shel Shnein, that we had taught in that Brisa that we so what do we say? If it belonged to one of them, so for example, if it belonged to the Lokeach, if it was the Lokeach's vessel, and we said that B'Rishus HaRabim Kelyo Shel Lokeach is Koneh. Now Rav and Shmuel and apparently Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Bar, Rish Lakish, everybody seems to be saying that in Rishus HaRabim, Kelyo Shel Lokeach is not Koneh. So Mala Rishus HaRabim Mamish. We assume that the Brisa is talking about Mamish and Rishus HaRabim. We're saying that Kelyo Shel Lokeach is Koneh. In the Brisa we're saying it is Koneh. So Lo Simta. No, when it says Rishus HaRabim, it actually means a Simta, like we said earlier. Yeah, but it says Rishus HaRabim o b'chotzer sheni shel shneim, right? So therefore, Rishus HaRabim must, right? So a simta is a place where both of them are shaykh, but we're saying Rishus HaRabim o b'chotzer sheni shel shneim, meaning we're comparing Rishus HaRabim to, we're equating it with a chotzer sheni shel shneim, a chotzer that belongs to neither of them. So it sounds like this Rishus HaRabim is not a simta. My chotzer sheni shel shneim. No, what does it mean? It belongs to neither of them. Nami delo the high kula v'lo the high kula tavai. No, when it says, interestingly, when it says chotzer sheni shel shneim, it doesn't mean that neither of them have rishus to this chotzer at all. No, it means that neither one of them entirely owns the chotzer. Rather they jointly own the chotzer. In that case, well, just like so the Rishus HaRabim is referring to simta, which is a place that they both have shaykhs to, and chotzer sheni shel shneim means a chotzer that belongs 100% to neither one of them. Rather they share it. They both have access to it, and in those places, we'll say that Kelyo Shel Lokeach is Koneh, in a place that he is shaykh to. Ba'amine Rav Sheshes Rav Huna. Rav Sheshes asks Rav Huna, Kelyo Shel Lokeach b'shus mocher Koneh Lokeach olav. Okay, so Rav Sheshes asks Rav Huna, the vessel of a buyer of the Lokeach of Reuven in Shimon's domain. So I don't know. Reuven goes into Shimon's. I imagine his store should be considered Shimon's domain. That was, I think, a Gemara in like BavaBasra or something. I don't know. I'm going to assume that Shimon's store would be considered. I think that was Taka a Gemara in BavaBasra. I may have Taka learned that on October 7th. I have to look it up. Anyways, where am I? So anyway, so Reuven's vessel in Shimon's domain, Koneh Lokeach olo. So if Sheshes wants to know, is Reuven Koneh in his own vessel if he's in Shimon's domain? So Amalei, so Rav Huna responds, Tinisua, well, we have a Mishnah in Masechta Gittin, Zarko la l'socheka l'soch kalaso. So if he throws the get, I didn't look at it. I think chekas are lap, right? Let me just confirm. Yeah. If he throws, so a husband and a wife, they are getting divorced, and I guess the wife is in the husband's house, and he throws her the get, and it lands on her lap or in her bag. Harezo migoreshes. She is divorced. So we see her vessel, her bag, her vessel in his house. She's divorced. So it sounds like Kel Yoshelokeach B'Shus Mocher Kana Lokeach. Omar Le Rav Nachman responds to Ravuna, he says that is a terrible Mishnah to bring a proof from. My time of Pashat Le Me'ai, why are you bringing that Mishnah as a proof? The Machula Mea Uchla Be'uchle, they like mamish pulled up, they whacked that Mishnah with 100 whackers. They're like that Mishnah is a piece of work. We have all sorts of different ways to try to make that Mishnah make sense. That's not a very straightforward Mishnah. The Amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So after all, says Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. He's just one of like 5 Amoraim we're about to quote. That the only reason why she's divorced is because the bag was hanging from her. Rish Lakish says, well, that the bag was at least tied to her, even if it wasn't hanging per se. Ravada bar Ahava Omer says, Ravada bar Ahava kigon choiso kalosu menachas lo ben yarchoseh. That says Ravada bar Ahava, that for example, I imagine means like if she was sitting on the floor or something, and the get lands between her legs as she's sitting there. And so in that case also it's that's why it's davka shaychter. Rav Mishasha Brei Reb Ami Omar. So the Mishasha Brei Reb Ami, meaning in the bag that's between her legs. Rav Mishasha Brei Reb Ami Omar can go and try to buy the mocher kalasos for. So he says, for example, if the husband was a bag merchant and therefore like he's not makbid on the place, there's tons of bags in his house and he's not really makbid on the place where the bags are. So that's why it could be kona. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, makom cheka knuyala, her lap is hers. Makom kalasa knuyala, her bag is hers. Rabbi says, Rav, my time, Rabbi Yochanan, why does Rabbi Yochanan say this? Lefishe ein adam makbid la, makom chekav la, makom kalasa, because the husband is not going to be makbid on, where on the place that her, where her lap is or where her bag is, like it's hers. So meaning the point is, we like had all of these reasons, like. All these Amoraim are like going out of their way to try to make sense of the fact of like, well, what about Kel Yoshelokeach B'Shus Mocher? Like, right, meaning Rav Huna is bringing this Mishnah to say that, well, if the husband throws this get and it lands in her bag, she's divorced, so therefore it must be Kel Yoshelokeach B'Shus Mocher Kana. To which Rav Nachman points out, wait a second, that was actually extremely not straightforward. All of these Amoraim were like, putting up red flags and saying, wait a second, we have to explain why this could possibly work, because by default we don't know that it would necessarily work, and therefore they said, well, maybe it was tied to her, maybe she was sitting and it was between her legs, maybe the husband sold that. Like, they're all coming up with all sorts of reasons why it works. It's the most not straightforward Mishnah in the world. Why would you try to bring that as a proof? Elapshot lo meho. Rather try to answer it from the following. B'Shus Mocher, we had said in that brisa with the 4 categories that in the reshus of the seller, lo kana achi agbihena o achi yotziena mer shuso, that in Shimon's reshus, Reuven is only kona the fruits if he does a kinyan hagbah, or if he takes it out of Shimon's reshus, i.e., my lab b'chel shel lokech, and let's say that this is talking about in Reuven's vessel, and still Reuven's vessel is not kona. He's only kona if he does a kinyan hagbah, or if he takes it out of Shimon's reshus. Lo b'chel democher. No, it's talking about Shimon's vessel, and that's why Reuven is not kona unless he does a kinyan hagbah or takes it out of the reshus. But we could argue that if it was Reuven's, but that's why Reuven's not kona except for hagbah or take it out of the reshus. But if it was Reuven's vessel, so I could argue that maybe he would be kona. Okay, so if you want to say that that's talking about Shimon's vessel, well then let's also say that the next case is talking about Shimon's vessel. That if we're talking about in Reuven's domain, once Shimon agrees to sell to Reuven, and they agree upon a price, it automatically is a kinyan for Reuven. But if we're saying that it's talking about Shimon's vessel, then why is Reuven kona if it's still in Shimon's vessel? So Seifa Ason l'chayu de lokeach. Well, in in the Sefer where it's talking about in Reuven's domain, it's talking about Reuven's vessel. Why are we assuming that in Shimon's domain it's Shimon's vessel and in Reuven's domain it's Reuven's vessel? Like, why are we changing things up? Well, because it makes sense to change things up. Well, it makes sense that in Shimon's domain, it's going to be Shimon's vessel there. In Reuven's domain, it's going to be in Reuven's vessel. So that is why. Okay, but we didn't necessarily prove anything vis-a-vis Kalil Shalokech B'Shus Mocher. That was Daf Hey of Masechta BavaBasra. We're getting into Hadbosh, Tikul Meshicha, Kalil Shalokech B'Shus Mocher. So we're talking about if Shimon is selling fruits to Reuven. Since the next parak is called Mocher Paris. That's in about a week. Anyways, if Shimon is selling fruits to Reuven in a simta, does he have to put it in Reuven's vessel? What if he just puts it on the floor? So Machlokus of Asi and Reb Zera. And then we got into this idea of Kel Yoshaladam Konela B'chol Makom. Right? So it seems that everybody was agreeing except for Rishus Harabim. Okay, fine. And then we got into the concept of Kel Yoshalokech B'Shus Mocher. And we're trying to figure that out right now. Peace out.